It's good to see you today. Hope everything is going well. It is January 14th. Our reading today is from Genesis chapter 37 through chapter 39. And to get over there, we are getting into Joseph. So in chapter 37, we have Joseph's dreams, which his brothers didn't care a whole lot for. Verse 4, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. His father and mother, I believe it talks about. Um, Verse 10, Jacob says, shall your mother and I and your brothers indeed come to bow down to the earth before you? Yeah, that's exactly what was going to happen. But anyway, verse 12 and on, Joseph sold by his brothers, as it says, and he's going to be sold to the Midianites, to the Ishmaelites. Originally, they were going to kill him. We're going to come back and we're going to read some of that passage. We know what they say to Jacob. They say that he was killed, but they had sold him. But anyway, that is chapter 37. Chapter 38, you have the account of Judah and Tamar. Horrible account. And if you read that, you know what I'm talking about. Then chapter 39 is Joseph and Potiphar. Joseph and Potiphar's wife. And that's the account, of course, where she tries to seduce him, and he flees from her, leaves his garment in her hand. She lies about him. He ends up in the dungeon. And as he's there in the dungeon, of course, the Lord was with him, verse 23. But we'll pick that up in our next study. But let's back up to chapter 37 and look at the passage as Joseph is sold by his brothers. Jacob tells him to go see to his brothers, and Joseph goes to see if it is well. Verse 14. As he's seeking his brothers. Verse 18. Now when they saw him afar off, even before he came near them, they conspired to kill him. And then they said to one another, look, this dreamer is coming. Come therefore, let us now kill him and cast him into some pit, and we shall say, some wild beast has devoured him. We shall see what will become of his dreams. But Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands, and said, let us not kill him. And Reuben said to them, shed no blood, but cast him into this pit which is in the wilderness, and do not lay a hand on him, that he might deliver him out of their hands, and bring him back to his father. So it came to pass, when Joseph had come to his brothers, that they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the tunic of many colors that was on him. And they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty. There was no water in it. And they sat down to eat a meal. Then they lifted their eyes and looked, and there was a company of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels, bearing spices, balm, and myrrh, on their way to carry them down to Egypt. So Judah said to his brothers, what profit is there if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh. He's all about family, isn't he? And his brothers listened. Then Midianite traders passed by, so the brothers pulled Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit, and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver, and they took Joseph to Egypt. Reuben returned to the pit, and indeed Joseph was not in the pit, and he tore his clothes. He returned to his brothers and said, the lad is no more, and I, where shall I go? So they take the tunic, dip it in blood, and go and tell Jacob he's dead. And Jacob is inconsolable. Let's talk about the brothers. They are absolutely hateful. They were so hateful in that passage that we read at the beginning, the brief verse in that first chapter. They were so hateful that they could not speak peaceably to him. Their family, but they just can't stand him. They just absolutely cannot stand him. And it hurts when people are that hateful, but it happens. It hurts when people no more want to talk to you than the man in the moon. And they treat you like you might as well be dead. They are absolutely hateful. absolutely hateful towards Joseph. They are so hateful that when they say, when Joseph comes, they conspired against him to kill him. That's what they were going to do. Let us now kill him and cast him into some pit, and we shall say some wild beast has devoured him. And they're just cooking it up, and they're just going to lie about it. And it's just, they're conspiring. They are conspiring to kill him. This is what happens when hatred goes unchecked. When animosity builds, and when anger goes unchecked as well, I think. When anger just builds and builds and builds, and it festers, and it turns into hatred, and hatred turns into something else. So much animosity. His own brothers were prepared to kill him. They were prepared to kill him and then lie about it. Their own flesh and blood. And that's just how this is what happens. This is the danger, that when we hate someone, we start wishing them harm. Oh, maybe we don't want to kill them, but we wish them harm. And if harm does come to them, maybe we say things like, oh, well, they deserved it. And it says more about our own hearts and the hearts of Joseph's brothers. And I hope as we go through and read it and you start seeing how Joseph is somewhat of a type of Jesus, and you start kind of seeing Jesus came to his own and his own did not receive him, might consider it. They are absolutely hateful. They are ready to kill him. But then, of course, what is said is, Reuben says what he says, let us not kill him. Reuben says, shed no blood, cast him into the pit, right? All this stuff that we already read, that he might deliver him out of their hands. But as they took him and cast him into the pit, and they sat down to eat a meal, he's down in the pit. There's no water in it. I don't know how far it was that he came to find them. The pit's empty. There's nothing in it. And they sit down to eat a meal. They sit down to eat a meal. When Jesus is going to the cross, it's the time of the Passover. You might think about them sitting down to eat a meal, as the Passover was actually, Passover lamb was dying for them in Jesus. But they sat down to eat a meal. Can you imagine being so calloused? Absolutely. Absolute callousness. Unfeeling. Their brother's down in a pit. I don't know if he cried out. Maybe he didn't. They don't care. They hate him. They were prepared to kill him. And they sit down to eat a meal. Unfeeling. Scripture talks about those who have their consciences seared. That's a real danger when we defile our conscience. If we keep doing that, our conscience can become seared and we can become unfeeling. Well, Joseph's brothers, they are unfeeling about this whole thing. They sit down to eat a meal. And then they come back and they tell their father that he's dead. After they've sold him to the Ishmaelites, as Judah says, what profit is there? What's in it for us? What profit is there? If we kill our brother and conceal his blood, let's sell him. I wonder what they did with that money. 20 shekels of silver. Reuben goes back to the pit, so you can tell he's not there with them at that point. But then as they come back and they tell Jacob, their father, they say, we have found the tunic. Do you know whether it is your son's tunic or not? They knew full well. He recognizes, he says, it is my son's tunic. A wild beast has devoured him without doubt. Joseph is torn to pieces. Then Jacob tore his clothes, put sackcloth on his waist, and mourned for his sons many days. And all his sons and all his daughters arose to comfort him. But he refused to be comforted, and he said, For I shall go down into the grave to my son in mourning. Thus his father wept for him. His sons rose to comfort him. His sons arose to comfort him. Absolute hypocrisy. They knew Joseph was alive. They knew that Jacob loved Joseph. And that was the reason for their animosity, because Jacob loved Joseph more than anybody else. They knew their father loved their brother. And as he is inconsolable and has torn his garments, they arose to comfort him. Joseph is going to be in Egypt for years, and up until Joseph revealing himself, and then they come back and they have to fess up to Dad at some point about what they did. But it's going to be years. It's going to be years. They let their father think that his son was dead. They arose to comfort him in their absolute hypocrisy. Judas came to Jesus and kissed him. Friend, why have you come? Absolute hypocrisy. And that's what happens when people are hateful and hurtful, but they like to pretend that they are your biggest fans. And they're not. They actually wish you harm. And it's just absolute hypocrisy. And Joseph's brothers at this point, they are absolutely hypocritical. Sort of a sad account, but it's what happened. So, hope to study as we've thought about them. Hope it's been helpful. And of course, hopefully it's sort of an example in the negative sense. We learn how not to be. But I hope it's been helpful. Hope you have a good day, and I hope you join us. For another study on Monday, I believe. Appreciate it. Have a good one.